You lived an outwardly mild and ordinary life while committing acts of the deepest darkness. You were described as a man who was good under pressure, while in seclusion, you became a vulture, picking your victims from among the dead. Within the hidden world of hospital mortuaries, you committed unspeakable acts, simply because you had a swipe card. The totality of your murderous, bizarre, and grossly repellent offending means you would never have been released from prison. Your conscience is seared, calloused over. The sentence I'm about to pass means you will spend every day of the rest of your life in prison. Please, take him down.
Hello and welcome to Our Good Murderer podcast. We're back once again with the audience vote. It is that time again of the season, and I'm joined by the prickly character, Ben Carter.
Thank you so much. Prickly by name and very much prickly by nature. How are we doing, boys? How are we doing, producer Dan? Audience vote time. It comes around so soon.
It's crazy that we've only got one episode left after this one, isn't it? Crazy. Yeah. It's gone crazy fast. I'm feeling good though, primarily because I got a new chair.
Come on.
Oh,
that one's in the bin now. Quite ominous looking chair in the background there. Didn't mean for that to happen. But yeah, I'm good. I hope
looks like a cuck's chair, if you don't mind me saying.
Dan. Brilliant. Well, fine. Yeah.
In the background. No, the one watching.
Yeah, this one.
The one you're in now.
Yeah. Tom, are you well?
Yeah, I'm not bad, mate. Not bad. Excited to cover this case. It's always interesting to do the audience vote because it's always a case of I never know where it's going to go. You could have given me a million guesses, I never would have guessed David Fuller. So yeah, I'm very interested, and I trust the audience with what they picked. So I'm excited to cover this case. But I'm glad we do have a finger on the pulse because we did cover 7-7, and that actually won the audience vote by a distance. But we thought we already knew you guys wanted that, so we covered that early. But I'm very excited to get into today's case.
Yeah, I have to say, when it came down to the final two after 7-7, David Fuller and Samuel Little, I very much expected Samuel Little to win. I was kind of dreading it as well because it's quite a giant case and we have a slightly smaller turnaround window.
More like Samuel Big Case. Am I right, Ben, in a way?
He's not wrong.
Just a little play in the name.
And when I obviously did the initial, because David Fuller rang a little bit of a bell, I did the initial look online. Oh, okay, the bedsit murders look like a relatively short case. Then you look at all the other things, and actually, in fact, it's interesting. I did a little, and I encourage everyone to do this from time to time, searched my phone photo gallery, the word mortuary, and only one result, and it was a screenshot of the Sky News notification from October 2021. At the height of the pandemic, I must have screenshot it to send to you, Tom. I must have done.
I don't think I ever received that.
No, you did. You definitely did.
I'm not sure.
I've got no results for mortuary in my phone.
Electrician accused of double murder, sexually assaulted dead bodies in mortuaries, court told. Oh, sorry, this was from Monday the 1st of November, 2021.
There you go.
So, aware of it, but we weren't doing shorts back then, were we? So I must have sent it to one of you boys, or someone at least, someone out there. Come on.
I don't know, maybe it's just for your own little dossier for the dossier. But yeah, David full of mystery for me, because I didn't really know much about it. And I'm very excited to explore it with you guys.
Yeah, I also have to say, this is in a very different way. I mean, we've done the case of Junko Furuta, we've done the Hello Kitty murder, we've done the murder of Kellyanne Bates, all of them amongst the most despicable things you could ever imagine. This is up there, but in a completely different way. When we did the research for this one, there was a point where I had to stop, because I was just like, this does not seem real. How someone goes to this point in their mind and in their actions, I still can't comprehend it. So I'm fascinated to get your boys' opinions. And producer Dan, I actively encouraged him to come in blind to this case because he gives great reactions anyway. But I'm very intrigued.
I hope you haven't had a big breakfast, Dan.
No, I've just got a protein pot here, which is probably going to come up later in it. So
yeah, maybe just empty that out on the floor and just have it as a little pot there ready for you.
I am actually feeling a bit nervous now. So
sorry, mate.
Here we go.
Ben will be gentle. Me sitting in the cuck chair.
And then, just one other little thing before we start. Obviously, we do an audience vote every series. We post all of our references and, it's super interesting links to each case in our Facebook group, which we wanted to do a little shout out to Adam Meany, always very active in our community, but I'm not sure he'll be super happy about us highlighting the fact that he shared a post that showed the unfortunate resemblance he had to an individual in the Gabby Petito case.
Spitting image.
Yeah, yes. But it does look a lot kinder, as someone pointed out in the comments. Kinder eyes, which is
definitely kinder eyes. But yeah, the Facebook group is really popping off. The atmosphere over there is great. So if you want to get involved, we do put little Easter eggs and little things we mentioned within the case in there just for you guys. So it's a great place to be.
Lovely stuff. Well, that's enough waffle. We're going to jump into the case. This week, of course, it is the audience vote, the case of David Fuller, also referred to as the Morgue Monster, the Bedsit Murders, the Hospital Horrors, the hard drive from hell, which I was immediately nervous typing that out because I knew there might be some jokes. The most despicable person in British history, the murderer and the mortuary, the bedsit killer, and Mr. Bowie is hungry. David Bowie.
Fuller.
David needs to get fuller. He's hungry because he needs to get fuller.
Has anyone ever said I need to get fuller? Ever? Has it ever been said?
Maybe babies.
Babies don't speak, mate. So
I need to get fuller.
I need to get fuller. I don't think it's ever been said, but
who knows?
interesting.
Can't prove it.
Fairly confident in that.
Someone got the Jodi Arias one, which is mad. So anything can happen.
Congratulations.
Right? Thank you.
Well, no.
I don't know. It's like
Both of us.
But I wouldn't have thought they got to it from your explanation of it.
Well, they got to it somehow.
Yes, just a wild stab in the dark, and it happened to be right on the gullet.
Thank you.
But yes, Dan, would you like to take us to the night of June 22nd, 1987?
Tunbridge Wells, Kent.
Tunbridge Wells. Brackets, Tunbridge Wells, Kent.
I'd love to. The night of June 22nd, 1987. 25-year-old Wendy Knell was spending the evening together with her family and her boyfriend, Ian Plass. As Wendy had previously been married at a young age, she wanted to take things slow with her new partner. The couple enjoyed an evening meal together with Wendy's parents before saying their goodbyes and getting on Ian's motorbike. Ian, who lived at the opposite end of town, then drove Wendy to her bedsit at number 14 Guildford Road. Here, the pair shared an embrace and said goodnight to one another. There was brief talk, and the couple flirted with the possibility of Ian spending the night. But the pair eventually decided against it and insisted on continuing to take it slow. Ian then said goodbye and drove off into the night, leaving Wendy to slowly make her way to her bedsit. But there would be another man watching and waiting for Wendy from within, and she would not be home alone. That night marked the last time that Ian, or any of her family members, ever saw Wendy alive, and it would take an agonising 34 years, as well as another almost identical murder, for her killer to finally be brought to justice. His eventual 2020 arrest unleashed a tidal wave of pure horror across the nation. Almost 1 million pieces of revolting and increasingly upsetting evidence were uncovered from within his family home, linking him to more than 100 additional and unfathomable crimes. A monster had been living safely in society for more than 3 decades, preying on those beyond vulnerable, who were supposed to be resting in peace.
How did David Fuller, already a double murderer, manage to access and abuse hundreds of bodies in hospital mortuaries for multiple decades without detection? When did he turn to a life of such ghastly crimes, committing unforgivable acts on a morbidly routine basis? What crucial pieces of evidence finally linked him to the 1987 bedsit murders of Wendy Knell and Caroline Pierce 34 years after their killings? And why did David Fuller, a seemingly ordinary and unassuming member of the public, choose to commit such an array of disturbing and grotesque crimes over such an extensive period of time?
So we're going to look into the background of David Fuller before exploring how he became the monster of the morgue. A man capable of multiple home invasions, murders, sexual assaults, paedophilia, and more than 100 acts of necrophilia.
Ooh, wowza.
Yeah.
Wowza's trousers.
David Lewis Fuller was born on Saturday the 4th of September 1954 in the port city of Portsmouth, England. Frustratingly for this case and for our potential understanding of why David went on to do what he did, there is really not a great deal of information or any kind of detailed public record about his early life. No information about his parents, his siblings, his family life, his education, or his upbringing. However, through court records, DNA profiling, and lengthy interrogation footage, we are able to note that David grew up in a religious household, spent a great deal of his childhood between Portsmouth and Kent, and also had at least one brother. A brother of whom somehow ended up on the United Kingdom National DNA Database. We do not know if David was perhaps abused as a child. We do not know if David's parents provided him with a stable home environment and a healthy, happy upbringing. We do not know if David had experienced any kind of psychological or physical abuse, either in or outside the education system. We do not know how well David socially integrated as a child. We do not know if he was bullied. We do not know if he was ever physically violent or abusive himself. We do not know about the first sexual experiences of David's life. We do not know, we don't know anything about this guy. We do not know if he may have experienced any kind of trauma that may have impacted his developmental sequence, but what we do know is the following.
Not a lot.
See you next week.
David grew up on the south coast of England, spending his time living between Portsmouth and different parts of Kent. I'm going to Kent this weekend.
Ooh,
Enjoy.
brilliant.
I'm not going to any morgues. I assure you of that, sir.
It looked like a really big county. Which part of Kent, Tom? Coastal?
Round Margate, yeah.
Lovely.
Seen a good friend.
Fingers crossed the weather. The weather looks great this weekend as well. Well done.
I think it's quite windy though, because it's by the coast.
Oh.
But fingers crossed. As a youngster, he was able to experience the black and white of the 1950s and the technicolor of the emerging swinging 60s. He was growing up in a time where the country was slowly putting the memories of World War II behind them and looking forward to the future of freedom, hope and promise. London became the cool capital of the world, and anything felt possible if you were a young person at this time. According to one user of Quora, of all things, the summers were longer and hotter, the winters were prettier and snowier, the prices were cheaper, the music and fashion was better, and kids could still play in the street.
That does sound good, actually.
It sounds lovely, Dan.
I only recall like one or two nice winters, snowy winters, like for Christmas. I think I had one white Christmas in my life, I think.
Well, I've had two, so you would have more than one.
Okay. Different villages.
Surely you were around the same time as David.
No, that's definitely blatant untruth.
From an early age, David developed an interest in sports, science, photography, and music. Later in life, he would develop a particularly intense interest in bird watching. Twitching, as it's commonly known. Well, actually, there's a difference between bird watching and twitching, isn't there? I think twitching, you go out seeking the rarer birds, whereas bird watching is just your generic. You just see them and you're keeping a note of how many birds you see.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
I could be absolutely murdered in the comments there if I'm incorrect.
Hopefully.
I'm going to put my neck out. Skill and traits for which he had perhaps attained as a peeping Tom, prowler and lurker in his far more private earlier life. In 1972, when David was 18, he enrolled on a 4-year City and Guilds apprenticeship as an electrical technician at Her Majesty's Dockyard in Portsmouth, which he completed. And in the late 1970s, as David reached his mid-20s, he relocated permanently to Kent, where he worked in various positions throughout West Kent, all related to his expertise in electronics. And here he was remembered as a quiet and friendly man.
Always watch out for them. No, I don't always.
Well,
Sometimes.
if you're watching out for friendly people, you're going to be watching out a lot, mate.
Depends where you live.
I
don't know. What's the unfriendliest part of the UK? Let's find out.
I think around the south.
Subjective.
London.
You're probably right. Unfriendliest country in the world? Morocco.
Oh.
Straight away, Morocco. Oh boy, I've loaded this for years. Cornwall, without a doubt, is the most unfriendly people I've ever met in the UK. Cornwall? That's just one person's opinion. Sorry, it's not the...
I would strongly say London. But that's pretty unfair to London because a lot of people commute into London. So maybe it's dickheads from other places coming into London.
The energy is bad in London anyway.
Yeah.
The further north you go, the friendlier the people get.
That's what I've always said.
Backed up by crime stats as well. In some cases, the Met are very busy. Obviously, they're very busy. But hey, let us know in the comments, where's the unfriendliest place you've ever been? Is it Morocco? Is it Cornwall? Or is it neither?
And that's your two options.
During this time, and over the following decade, some cracks would start to appear in the seemingly ordinary surface that David Fuller appeared to be projecting. He got married to his first wife, Jill Palmer. However, that ended after a short period of time when it was revealed that David was having multiple affairs with his work colleagues. As well as this, in both 1973 and 1977, David was found guilty of numerous home burglaries known as creeper burglaries, during which he entered residences through back windows. However, nobody was harmed and no items of large value were taken. He did not spend any time in prison. This leads some people to believe, especially with the context of what happens later in this case, that David was doing two possible things with these break-ins: practicing and waiting.
Peculiar. And it is, I should revert on that. It's always the quiet and friendly ones. It's definitely not. But that is, that's a big change in his life. So he's now obviously got married. That's ended pretty quickly. Couple of affairs, and he's been caught. Then dozens of creeper burglaries, which sounds terrifying. But because he didn't steal anything or hurt anyone, he's not ended up in prison. But he's still broken into dozens of different homes. And people believe this is at the point where he's, potentially waiting for someone to come home and was maybe trying to do something else with those break-ins, but we can't prove that either way. But yeah, very bizarre little turn.
To know someone has been in your house and left without you knowing is
Don't like it.
horrible. David got married for a second time to a lady named Sally in 1985. This marriage would once again break down as a result of David's infidelity, and David would marry for a third time to a lady named Marla. However, during the time that he was together with Sally, the pair went on tour with the London-based rock band Cutting Crew, for whom David became the unofficial photographer.
Yeah, that's the first thing kind of you see is like the interesting facts about David Fuller. And I assumed it was just this little London band, ignorantly. And it's the band that did I Just Died in Your Arms Tonight. So, and other hits. Yeah, so he went on tour with them, which is, if there's one thing that's pretty cool about his life, it's that. Nothing else. Nothing else.
Good gig, yeah. Good gig.
Good gig, yeah. Unofficial. I don't know if he just travelled with them.
Oh, just followed them. Yeah, man.
Yeah, just took loads.
As good as gig as I thought it was.
Right, mate. Yeah, but great track.
Great track.
The thought of that track with what he goes on to do is a bit...
Oh, yeah.
Great point, actually, Tom.
Thanks so
Great
much.
point. Great point.
During the course of David's 3 marriages, he became a father to 4 children, all of whom have since had their identities protected. One of the colleagues he had an affair with recalled the following. He was quite a quiet man, but he was quite friendly. I met him in the hospital social club, and he brought me several cocktails. He was a perfect gentleman with me. I didn't see a bad side to him at all. There was nothing to lead me to believe he's the person we've now found him out to be.
Doesn't sound like the account of someone who's had an affair with him, like a hot, steamy affair. He was quite a quiet man, but he was quite friendly.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, well, I can see what you really saw in him. David, who hadn't yet worked at any hospitals but was still working as an electrician, relocated to the Kent town of Royal Tunbridge Wells during the late 1980s. At this time, Tunbridge Wells, for the most part, was described as a very affluent, middle-class location that had become particularly popular with those looking for a quaint town lifestyle with good links to London. As a result, a large number of people wanted to live there. To feed the growing demand, old houses were being converted by homeowners and property developers into multiple bedsits. The main streets where these conversions had been completed were referred to as the bedsit land. Kind of like Disneyland, but a lot more bleak. From then onwards to the locals and the media.
Bedsit, do we need to go into that? Most people know what a bedsit is, right? I think we've talked about it on a previous episode. I could be wrong here. My assumption is it's like paying a bit extra in a backpackers hostel. You get your own room, but you have to share, bathrooms and kitchens and stuff like that. It's like a small studio-ish.
I would have the same opinion, Ben, as you.
Oh, thanks, Dan.
A one-room unit of accommodation, typically consisting of combined bedroom and sitting room with cooking facilities. So yeah, basically just a studio.
There was this other thing that came up straight away. With Tunbridge Wells, I always assumed it was just kind of I thought it was located north of London rather than south of it, because I always remember hearing it when we get the train from Cambridge to London somehow, unless I'm getting Tunbridge Wells mixed up with somewhere else. But then this phrase kept coming up when I was looking at it that is disgusted of Tunbridge Wells, which apparently is a common generic name used in the UK to describe a person with strongly conservative political views who often writes letters to newspaper or the BBC expressing moral outrage. So,
Weird.
Yeah, apparently that's a really well-known thing. Disgusted at Tunbridge Wells. Disgusted of Tunbridge Wells, yeah. I think they're trying to say it's a very sort of middle-class area-ish.
Yeah, we've had a couple of coffees in Tunbridge Wells before, and it looks quite posh. I mean, we haven't explored it. We've just been passing through. Yeah. That's all I've got to say on the matter, really.
Good coffee, though.
Excellent coffee, and we bumped into...
Did you get a cake?
The first time we went...
Celeb.
All right. Yeah, the first time we went for coffee there, we bumped into Simon Squibb, if you know Simon Squibb.
Rings a big old bell.
He's the guy who runs up to people and goes, "What's your dream?
Oh, yeah.
What's your dream? If I could give you £10,000 now, what would you do with it? I mean, just do it."
I'm going to invest in your company, then we're going to share it. Yeah, I know that guy.
Yeah. So we said hello.
That's cool, Dan.
Did you pitch to him?
No. Should have actually.
He's like, I'm actually off today.
Yeah. He did look like he was in the middle of a business meeting, but we said a quick hello.
Oh.
Cheers, Simon.
Nice one, Squibb.
If you want to invest in ICMAP.
Sure.
Vicar of Squibbly. Doesn't really work. During the late 1980s, with the steep increase in population, Tunbridge Wells was still considered a very pleasant and very safe place to live, with lots of people often walking across the town common late at night by themselves, with no fear of who they may encounter. There was, however, a slow increase in the number of burglaries and reports of strangers prowling on lone women in the area. These reports seemed to increase as more and more undesirable individuals became aware of the location. And the events that transpired during the summer and winter of 1987 turned what was once a peaceful and thriving community completely on its head, as it became the scene of brutal home invasion murders that left the nation horrified. But so much more unspeakable horrors were to follow. And it's here we move to the timeline of David Fuller, the Morgue monster.
Tuesday, June 23rd, 1987, the early hours of the morning. 25-year-old Wendy Knell had been living by herself in a bedsit at number 14 Guildford Road in Tunbridge Wells. She was entering the prime of her life, and everybody could tell. Her older sister described her as daft, scatty and silly, but admitted that everybody loved her and nobody had a bad word to say about her. Wendy got married and left home at a young age, and unfortunately the marriage did not last. She got divorced whilst moving back to Tunbridge Wells in order to be closer to her family and start a new life for herself, and she was very much in the process of doing so. Wendy had worked her way up to the position of a manager at Super Snap's photo developing shop, and she also had a place of her own and a new relationship of her own, which she was taking slowly. Her boyfriend, Ian Plass, who we mentioned at the start of the episode, lived at the opposite end of town and had just spent the evening with her before he dropped her off at home not long after midnight. The couple then shared a kiss before saying their goodbyes for what would be the final time.
I would love for Tom to do a jingle for Super Snap's photo developing shop.
Super Snap's photo developing. It's such a name. It's a long-winded name.
Don't worry. We can move on. Maybe ever think about it.
Yeah, I'll have a little think about it. But by the way, if I ever sadly well, I will obviously pass on one stage. If you guys ever get interviewed about, describing me in 3 words, please don't do daft, scatty and silly. They're not the words I'd like to be echoing throughout the rest of my life. Well, not the rest of my life, the rest of my demise. But not the words I'd like to be picked. Zany, random, needy.
Yeah. The worst.
Just the worst.
Oh, yeah. Random's bad, man. I'd take anything else. Apart from nods.
Creepy. Handsy. Tinny.
No, cut that. Not at all.
What word did you describe Ben as?
Oh, here we go. He's not asking the comment section, by the way. He's just asking Dan.
Feel free to join in.
Bumbly.
I'll take that.
It's cute.
Yeah.
Just bumbling
it's
along.
Isn't it?
Like a little bumblebee.
Stings himself to death.
Pulls his innards out.
I thought I was a flower. There you go. You got away quite hardly there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But let us know in the comments below.
So back at this very spooky scene, the couple have just shared a kiss before saying their goodbyes for what would be the final time. As Ian drove away into the night, Wendy slowly made her way into the bedsit. Little did she know that she would not be alone once she quietly entered the property. Just as Wendy went to turn on the lights, she was repeatedly struck in the face and head with a blunt instrument by an intruder. The individual then proceeded to violently strangle Wendy to death before sexually assaulting her and fleeing the scene through the same window in which he had entered. He stopped for a moment in order to tidy up the crime scene and put a small amount of varnish paint over the window latch, which appeared to have been cracked when he entered the bedsit. He then neatly arranged her clothing into one pile and arranged her corpse beneath a duvet on her bed, neatly folding the bedsheets in the process. Wendy was just 25 years old at the time that her life was taken, and her body would be discovered on her father's birthday.
The creepy thing about that, it seems to show the real two sides of him, the kind of Jekyll and Hyde side, like the monster who's obviously attacked her, and then the kind of practical brain was like, now I have to make this all right and just put everything away neatly and very calmly. So it's the real kind of, angry at the world, attacking, and then just the real calm and calculated, like bringing paint and stuff like that. It's just next level detail.
And just, the idea as well of someone waiting in your home when you already get there, or trying to, any kind of home invasion thing just makes my stomach turn. Yeah, it's the most scary scenario, or one of the most scary scenarios I could ever imagine. And it's a bedsit as well, so very small, confined space, not a lot of places for him to hide. And yeah, it's just an absolute horrendous scene. Later the following morning, Wendy's colleagues called her boyfriend as she did not turn up to work. He informed them that he had dropped her off at home the night before and had seen her make her way safely into the bedsit. He then immediately rushed over to Guildford Road and was met by the most devastating of scenes. Ian found his girlfriend to have been brutally murdered and immediately contacted the police. Duncan Gibbons, who was the Detective Chief Superintendent of Kent Police during 1983 and 1989, recalled the following.
Gibbons.
Oh, you should have seen what we got, Pete Gibbons.
We received a call. A young woman's body had been found in a bedsit by her boyfriend. She lived in Guildford Road, which is one of the areas where we knew that there was prowler activity. At the post-mortem, it was established that the woman had received a heavy blow to the head, had been strangled, and then had been sexually assaulted. She was 25 years old, and her name was Wendy Knell. This was a gruesome murder of a young woman alone, so there is a lot of public expectation, especially in a town like Tunbridge Wells. We knew this neighbourhood had a problem with prowlers, but this murder took us to another level. There was nothing that we wouldn't do to try and catch that killer.
Police arrive at the scene soon after the call and immediately cordon off the area whilst taking Ian in for questioning. The crime scene immediately became complicated for investigators. There was no sign of forced entry, the front door was still locked, and there was one window into the bedsit which wasn't totally secure, but appeared to have been completely shut. The scene, with the exception of the large volumes of blood from the victim, was left almost immaculate. There was no sign of any kind of rage or frenzied murder, and the scene pointed towards a composed, methodical killer who may well have been familiar with Wendy. Tom Wiles, who was a scenes of crimes officer for Kent Police, was one of the first on the scene.
It was a tiny flat, a one-room bedsit. I wonder how many times you said bedsit over the course of this episode. Bedsit.
Let us know.
Bedsit on a record, maybe.
Okay.
Over in one corner, there was a partially opened window. And then, you could see laying on the bed what was appeared to be a body covered in a duvet. There was blood staining on the floor at the side of the bed. There were blood spatters on the wall. The body was laying on her left-hand side with her knees slightly bent, and rather than just dumped there, it appeared to have been carefully placed. Once we uncovered the body, we then saw that there was a sizable head injury. We preserved all blood-stained evidence of the scene: the clothes, the duvet, a towel, a bloody shoe print, and a Millet's plastic bag left at the scene.
So Millet's, for anyone who isn't from the UK, I'm not sure if Millet's is international, it might be. It's like a camping store, or if you're going to buy walking boots, you might go to Millet's.
Outdoorsy stuff.
Yeah.
Millet's, I feel like we've actually had this conversation before with Millet's. It still has a website.
Well, they must still be in business, but...
Another jingle I'd like you to do, Tom, at some point.
Millet's.
Is that it?
You go... It's short and sweet.
Wigs.
Are you going for a walk? Do you need a comfy shoe? We've got you covered. Come inside. Come into Millet's. Do you want a torch you can wind up? No, I've got batteries. Well, we got both. Millet's. I don't know why I have torches, but that came to mind.
Brilliant.
As DNA and forensic evidence was still somewhat limited at the time, investigators made the decision to document and store as much evidence as they were possibly able to. They believed that, even if they were not able to solve the murder immediately, they could definitely solve it in the future. The key piece of evidence was a bloody boot print left by the bed. I always read that as, bloody boot print. A bloody boot print left by the bed. The key piece of evidence was a bloody boot print left by the bed.
Don't sound
Again,
like
but
it.
like tamely. The key piece of evidence was a bloody boot print.
The key piece of evidence was a bloody boot print left by the bed. This print was quickly identified as being a Clark's sports trainer. Talk about memories of Clark's for non-UK listeners. Shoes. School shoes. It was also revealed that Wendy's diary... Does that cover it? Clark's is just usually what you'd have probably as a school shoe as a kid. When you get older, you can get desert boots and things like that from Clark's. It's quite a solid brand.
That's the only place where I got my foot measured.
Yeah, that little plastic.
Yeah.
You sit on a stool and the plastic thing and they whack it.
Weird.
Well, I don't know if they whacked it with you, but you're very hard
squish your
on the
toes.
toe.
Yeah.
Was it in Royston, Dan?
Yes, Royston High Street.
I used to go there.
And that was near, the one shop down is where I choked on strawberry lace and almost died.
Oh my goodness. Maybe I was getting my feet measured when you were choking outside. Who knows? Yeah, do you remember, Dan? This is a really specific memory, but there was this girl's shoe that was in there, which had like a little key and like a little lock on it, like a little locket and a key.
Oh.
What are you looking at,
What
girl
was the
shoes?
purpose of the key?
Clark's. For?
Just in there, just in the
Was it
my
display?
feet measured.
Was it a display?
Display. Yeah.
I've got him out of the hole.
It wasn't really a hole. It was just.
So it was like in the
Competition.
middle as like an oversized shoe.
No, I think it had like a little golden locket on it and a little key for the person to. I don't know. That's not how you're taking the shoe on.
Music box shoe. Wind up with the key. And
I'll get back to the case. It was revealed that Wendy's diary had been taken alongside a pair of keys to the house, not for the shoe, which had also had very distinctive keyring attached to them that she had purchased whilst on holiday in Austria. Tunbridge Wells became a very scary place from that moment onwards. The once welcoming and vibrant community was completely on edge. Many women were no longer walking by themselves at night, and those that were constantly second-guessing which routes to take home and when to take them. Assumptions were made by the locals, however, that the killer would be caught very quickly. These assumptions would go on to be completely wrong. Over the coming weeks, 50 Kent and Sussex police officers took more than 200 statements and visited every home in the area. They interviewed all confirmed offenders and prowlers in the area at length, but nobody could be linked. Neighbours revealed that a peeping Tom was observed looking into windows on nearby Grove Hill Road at midnight, before also being spotted getting into a light blue or grey Talbot Horizon.
which is a car.
Yeah.
Which is a car.
Because if you're getting into, I don't think you can get into the actual horizon. Probably wouldn't end well.
What is a Talbot anyway? Feels like it's a fish.
Talbot.
Is it a Ford?
Just generally, if that's like an actual...
Talbot Horizon.
Oh, it seems to be a dog, Dan.
Oh,
Talbot's a dog breed.
there you go.
Oh, the car was made by Chrysler. Surprises me.
It kind of looks a bit like a beagle, but taller.
UK's rarest cars, the 1983 Talbot Horizon.
But they're extinct, Dan. Sorry to break it.
Too many things go
Sorry
down.
to break it. Sorry to break it to you.
No, it's fine.
It's a medieval dog.
It's cool.
That is cool, actually.
Do you see that thing about, what are they, the white wolves that they've brought back into existence?
No.
It sounds like a racist group.
No. Like polar wolves, kind of. Scientists genetically engineer wolves with white hair like the extinct dire wolf. I don't know where I got Power wolf from, or the white wolves from. They've managed to genetically engineer white wolves. Like
How do we
the
get
extinct
here?
dire wolf. I think just extinction, going back to Talbot Horizon, Dan asking some questions. We got a bit jumbled up. It's been an interesting episode so far.
Anyway, so he got
Dan
into
is
a
still
car.
laughing at the racist group.
So he got in a car which was light blue or grey Talbot Horizon, which Chrysler actually made that car. And they struggled to get it started at 1 a.m. or 1:10 in the morning. There's another way of putting that.
That's true. That's true.
Directly outside Wendy's bedsit, not long after she was believed to have been murdered. Local police also put on an event at the town assembly hall. Here they gave all women in attendance personal screech alarms. That's not the quirky guy from Save for the Bell. It's Imagine it's more just a thing like a button you press and it's going to make a loud noise and make people alert that you're in danger, Ben.
I was waiting for Dan to make the noise that I thought that was
I almost did, but I don't think it's appropriate. Soph's got a screech alarm when she goes jogging.
Is it called screech now? Still?
Well, I didn't want to say...
our alarm.
Yeah, it probably hasn't got a real official term. It's just an alarm of some description. But yeah.
Screech alarm. Yeah, that'd alert me to danger, to be fair.
That looked amazing.
Let's see if there's
That sounded like, you know, those fucking trap videos where you follow a dot and then all of a sudden the face of the girl from The Exorcist comes up. That was that scream, you fucking arsehole.
Oh my
Maybe we want to lose it from the audio version.
Yeah, you're going to scare the shit out of...
It'll be the same
coffee
level, don't worry, when it's all mixed.
Oh, you can do it loud on the video because that'll get people, won't it?
Can't wait to see that.
Fuck's sake.
Brilliant.
Let us know if it got you. I hope you're not doing anything important at the time,
I'm
like
so
putting
sorry,
the baby to
everybody.
bed or drinking a hot coffee.
Thing is, he was far away from the mic as
I
well.
was. Loud.
That's why it got me. I didn't think it was coming. It just disappeared behind my document and then I heard it.
The thing right down is you never know when he's coming.
He's got a slight temperature when he's coming, I've heard. So it doesn't matter. Screech alarm.
Yeah, thanks so much. So the local police also put on a presentation about the information that they had gathered so far and how the community could be safe and vigilant whilst the investigation continued. Detectives talked at length about how difficult prowlers, lurkers, or peeping toms were to catch. You could probably put them all in the same category, couldn't you? I guess a peeping tom's just a peeping. Prowler and a lurker, I think, they're...
Yeah, they're similar.
Is there a difference between a prowler and a lurker? Like, do lurkers just
I
sit
imagine
and wait?
lurkers tiptoe, prowlers just walk flat-footed but slowly. And that's based on no evidence whatsoever, just a vibe I'm getting from the names.
Based on cartoons.
Actually, prowlers suggest, they move, so maybe follow. Lurkers suggest they don't move.
Slide.
They're in like... they're in like a hedgerow or something. And a peeping Tom is at the window.
Wanking.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
We have got to get the lightness in this episode where we can, folks. It's about to get awful. Well, it still is awful.
They explained that it was a terrifying situation because they knew all the shortcuts. They knew all the back roads and they may have been doing it for many years. In putting on this event, they also hoped that the murderer would have been curious enough to the point that they may have attended. And it's not clear if he did or he did not. Sadly, they still have no update on solving Wendy's murder. Pam Knell, Wendy's 85-year-old mother, later recalled,
She was killed in June, on her father's birthday. She only got to live for 25 years. She would have been 60 this year. Once we got the news, it was as though a part of you had died. It was the worst pain ever. You knew you got to carry on, but you just didn't know how. Since then, I kept a photo of Wendy next to my bed, taken just before she was killed. And I always kiss at night and morning. That keeps me going. October of 1987, 4 months after her murder, still without any update on the investigation, and with local police under increasing amounts of pressure, Wendy Knell's murder was covered in a nationally televised episode of Crime Watch. Additional details are supplied with the hopes of that any members of the public would come forward with more information. A full recreation of Wendy's last day alive is reenacted, which suggests that the killer is already in her home, waiting at the time she got back. Tuesday, November 24th, 1987, around midnight. Almost exactly 5 months after the murder of Wendy Knell, and still without any key suspects on the police's radar, 20-year-old Caroline Pearce abruptly disappeared from her bedsit in Grosvenor Park, Tunbridge Wells, after being dropped off by a taxi late at night. Caroline had spent the evening making chili con carne at a friend's house before heading home as midnight approached. Caroline's bedsit was exactly 1 mile away from Wendy's. There was no sign of a disturbance or break-in. The front door was still locked, and the pair shared lots of other similar traits. Like Wendy, Caroline was a bright, beautiful, and outgoing young woman who had her whole future ahead of her. She too had worked her way up to the role of manager, at this time at an American restaurant called Buster Brown's. It's not appropriate for a jingle, sorry. This particular restaurant was on the same street as Super Snaps.
Does feel like a fictional place, doesn't it, with all these names?
Buster Brown's and Super Snaps. And it is possible that Wendy and Caroline may have unknowingly crossed paths multiple times in the months before they encountered David Fuller. Caroline had been in a relationship with Andy Soamson, who worked in the cocktail bar at the restaurant. and the pair very quickly fell for one another. But the relationship fizzled out after less than a year. Andy recalled the following. I was just drawn to her straight away. There was a certain force about her. Caroline was my first proper relationship, and things got serious very quickly. We moved in together. It was quite a big thing. Over time, I started to feel that there was a distance between us, and she explained she wanted to move out. Another waitress from Buster's had a bedsit available that was local to us, so she went there. They said a peeping Tom had been seen in that area, and so I obviously didn't like the idea of Caroline living there, but she did. One evening, she rang me up in the middle of the night saying she thought she'd seen a man out by the window. I went over to check, and she asked me to stay the night, so I did.
It's horrible, isn't it?
Yeah.
A police investigation was immediately launched, and just as Ian had been at the time of Wendy's murder, Andy very quickly became a suspect relating to Caroline's disappearance. The police immediately interrogated him at length and allegedly attempted to inform him that he had, quote, killed Caroline without knowing he had due to repressing the traumatic memory of it. Which is, they basically, the police, they didn't have any real suspect in mind, so they immediately honed in on the boyfriend of Wendy and the ex-boyfriend of Caroline, tried to convince them they'd done it. Upon speaking with neighbours, and this is where I can't believe the neighbours didn't do anything, 9 different people informed investigators that they had heard, quote, loud female screams at around midnight that night, but shockingly, none of them had reported it to the police. Caroline's bedsit was right on the end of a cul-de-sac, and you had to go down a set of stairs to get to her front door, as she was on the ground floor. Her front door was almost constantly in some form of darkness due to its positioning, and was described as the perfect location for a prowler to ambush someone by Detective Chief Superintendent Gibbons. A few days after Caroline disappeared, a very vicious and very similar rape attack occurred a few streets away from where Caroline lived. A young anonymous woman who, like both Wendy and Caroline, lived alone in a bedsit, was attacked and sexually assaulted by an intruder late at night. Newspaper articles of the time suggested that a knife and a set of keys were found in an alleyway adjacent to that particular property on Dudley Road. 24 hours after this attack, Kent police confirmed the arrest of Mr. Stuart Durkin. Durkin, who had previously been convicted of manslaughter for strangling his wife in Sweden the previous decade, admitted to over 20 burglaries in the Tunbridge Wells area, including a burglary at Caroline Pierce's bedsit before she moved in to that location, as well as eventually admitting to the rape of the anonymous woman on Dudley Road. So yeah, police basically think, case solved for Wendy, case solved for Caroline, we've got our guy. Police were convinced that they had the man responsible for the murder of Wendy and the disappearance of Caroline, but they had no evidence against Stuart Durkin, and he denied the allegations. They had no fingerprints, no DNA, no clothing, and no eyewitnesses. They couldn't place him at either scene, despite heavily suspecting him for the murder and the disappearance. He remained a key suspect for many years, but the killer of both victims was very much still out there. Tuesday, December 15th, 1987. 3 weeks after 20-year-old Caroline Pierce was first reported missing, her body was discovered 40 miles away from Tunbridge Wells on a farmland in Romney Marsh, Kent. This was just so needless of me, but both murders were committed on Tuesdays, and the body was also found on a Tuesday. So I don't know if that was... Well, obviously the body being found is a coincidence, but both murders being committed on a Tuesday, I thought was a bit...
Could be to do with it
off.
either commitments, work commitments, and day off. Rodney Marsh, not to be confused with Rodney Marsh, the ex-footballer.
Immediately went to Rodney Marsh, just a little Rodney Marsh. He went off the rails a bit, didn't he?
Did he?
He made a very bad remark about a tsunami. I'm sure that's what got him sacked. Caroline's body was discovered by a local farmer, John Minus, who was out tending to his field in a tractor during that cold winter's afternoon. John, who was highly traumatized by his findings on that day, stated the following.
That particular day, I was driving the tractor, cultivating the field. I came across this dead body down in a ditch next to the field. I realised it was a young woman. She was hardly dressed. She just had tights on. She was lying in about 3 inches of water. From the road, you couldn't see anything, but from the field, you could see her as plain as day. If we hadn't been working in that particular field that day, she would have been there for who knows how long.
Caroline's body was left in the fetal position in the ditch in a very similar manner to how Wendy Knell had been discovered deliberately posed. She had clear injuries to suggest that she had been bludgeoned multiple times in the head with a blunt instrument, as well as strangulation marks on her neck and evidence to demonstrate sexual assault had occurred. Upon investigating the scene, no items of clothing or any other evidence could be found in Romney Marsh. Police initially theorised that she had been murdered in Tunbridge Wells and her body had been taken to this location purely to be dumped there by someone who knew both areas well. However, many members of the general public believe that 2 different killers were now on the loose. Once again, police recovered and stored all evidence from this case, with hopes that the future forces may be able to solve the case if they were not able to.
Yeah, you have to give props to them.
Well, if you do, they'll probably store an evidence. Which is the right thing to do.
They were aware of their limitations. They took the cases obviously very, very seriously, but the fact that they were so meticulous in storing this for future generations is the only reason that this case was ever solved. The frightening thought is that he could have got away with these 2 murders as well as everything else that we haven't even started talking about yet that he went on to do, because that wouldn't have been discovered if he wasn't arrested. So massive props to everyone involved.
14,000 people were interviewed over the following 12 months, whilst almost 900 statements were taken. Unfortunately, no additional evidence could be gathered at either scene. No reviews of Wendy and Caroline's bedsits revealed any additional clues. Police still had no key suspects almost 2 years after the murders, so they placed all available evidence collected so far into storage, with hopes that DNA technology would continue to advance and that science would catch up with the person responsible for the murders. A potential serial killer was, meanwhile, still very much at large, but behaving in an entirely different, entirely unbelievable manner. In 1989, less than 2 years after seemingly getting away with 2 murders, 35-year-old David Fuller embarked on what would go on to become a more than 30-year career working in different private and public hospitals across the Kent and Sussex regions as an electrical maintenance craftsman, which is a very elaborate title.
It's nice, isn't it?
Craftsman Electrics. His first role was taken at Kent and Sussex Hospital. He would then go on to get a supervisory role at the same hospital 13 years later, before eventually going on to be transferred to a newly built Tunbridge Wells Pembury Hospital in 2011 through an agency called Interserve.
Go on.
I don't really know what they do.
Well, these used to be a big competitor of ours, actually.
Did they?
Not the podcast, but my previous role, yeah. So this was interesting to learn about them, their recruitment and vetting process.
The spend shifter and shader recruitment company there, guys. Yeah. If you didn't notice it.
Take that.
I guess if the police couldn't find anything, how are the Interserve going to do anything, Ben?
Well, doing a full and proper background check might have helped.
But there's nothing against his name.
He got done for loads of burglaries in the 70s. Would have come up on a proper check.
Well, how long does that sound your history there?
Some of them, if they're spent, can still show up. So I've seen some very interesting ones that made me incredibly uncomfortable. And not employed that person because of it. They were trying to work in social care. You'd be surprised. Anyway, that's a different conversation for a different time.
Throughout the latter end of these roles, David would have had to undertake a CRB and DBS background check as a formality due to working in a hospital environment. Evidence shows that David ticked no when the check asked if he had any previous reprimands, warnings, cautions, or convictions. That's quite easy to dodge it, isn't it? It's not a great system.
The system will still catch it. It's just him declaring.
Mate, CRB and DBS aren't going to get off for you, mate. Maybe just
like the TV license people all over again. No. I have a license, I'll watch.
A fully enhanced DBS check would have likely shown his dozens of offences for burglaries during the 1970s. However, bizarrely, his agency ticked pass on the HR file. We will talk more about David's time at these hospitals shortly.
What the fuck? 1999. 12 years after the murder, a re-examination was conducted on the duvet obtained from the crime scene of the murder of Wendy Knell. When this was carried out, it was revealed that a blood stain, as well as a partial semen stain, was found in the fibres. The evidence was then submitted for DNA profiling, and a full DNA profile was found. This was the biggest lead in the case so far, some 12 years after the murder. The profile was put to the national database, but there was no match, meaning that the killer had not provided any DNA samples if they'd been arrested previously. 500 other suspects were quickly ruled out, and hundreds of men in Tunbridge Wells and the surrounding areas were subsequently asked to provide DNA samples. August 20th, 2007. 20 years after the bedsit murders, Fiona Bruce presented an updated broadcast of the details surrounding both Wendy Knell and Caroline Pierce's bedsit murders as a cold case review, once again asking for help from the general public. Though they received thousands of tips, none of them proved to be fruitful. Weeks before he died, Bill Knell, the father of Wendy, said the following during a heartbreaking televised appeal for more information and the public support to try and find the person responsible for his daughter's murder almost 25 years after it happened. "I've got quite a lot of cancer and the specialists say they can't do any more for me, but I would really like him caught before the end comes, just to know who it was." He sadly passed away before the truth would eventually come out.
March of 2019. 32 years after the murders, forensic scientists make the decision to re-examine the tights that Caroline Pierce was wearing at the time that her body was discovered in the farmland ditch in Romney Marsh. Once this examination is completed, it is revealed that microscopic sperm heads were found on the tights, once again enabling DNA to be extracted from the evidence. It has the same DNA profile as the murderer of Wendy Knell. For the first time in 3 decades, the two unsolved murders had evidential links with one another and could be proven to have been interacted with by the same DNA profile. So yeah, for this whole time period, a lot of people believe they were 2 separate unsolved murders by 2 separate killers, and this has now linked them together, though some long believed that they were always linked. In early 2020, for much of the previous 2 decades, this era marked the rise in the use of familial DNA. Kent police started using this technique to see if they could find a match with anyone on their database to the DNA obtained from the duvet and tights at each of the crime scenes. And yeah, this is partly how they went on to catch the Golden State Killer in 2018, with obviously the genealogy websites and things like that. Police knew that any matches would come in the form of a relative of the individual responsible for the 2 murders. So anyone that was genetically similar, a mother, a father, an uncle, an aunt, a brother, a sister, or even if they had a son or daughter. A shortlist is generated and then analysed, and investigators looked at the ages as well as the locations of each of these individuals to see if they had any possible geographical links to Tunbridge Wells during the late 1980s. The list was eventually narrowed down to just 90 people. In September 2020, Kent police start taking DNA swabs of as many people on the list as they are able to, slowly making their way through all 90. Eventually, they got a complete profile match. The match had a brother who was living in Tunbridge Wells in 1987. This man was now 66 years old and working at Kent and Sussex Hospital. His name was David Fuller. They now begin to build their case against him as the bedsit killer from some 33 years prior. December 3rd, 2020, during the early hours of the morning, David Fuller is arrested at he and his wife's home in Heathfield, East Sussex. David, who is already awake and dressed at 5:20 in the morning, makes absolutely no protest as police immediately walk into his house as soon as he opens the door. And yeah, he does the very much like a morning, or blimey, hello.
Lives up to his quiet and friendly persona.
He doesn't look as shocked that they are there, even though he is kind of still like, oh, blimey, hello. He's still like, they just lets them straight in, hello. So there's some very infamous footage of this, and after the police explain what's going on, his wife is still asleep upstairs. He is then taken into police custody.
Morning. David's place. Hello. We need to come and speak to you. Oh, yes. You here alone? No. Is it Steve, is she? Yeah, just getting up to it. Okay. David, if you listen to what I'm going to say. Yes. Just, we're from Kent Police and we're investigating the murders of Wendy Knell and Caroline Pierce in 1987. Okay?
Whilst David is being processed and interviewed at the local police station, his wife sits in shock as his house is searched from top to bottom by several crime scene investigators. At the time of his arrest, a post-it note was found in his wallet, and the post-it note had the year 1987 written on it next to the details of his bank card, suggesting that he had morbidly decided to use 1987 as his PIN code, reminding him of the fact that he got away with 2 gruesome and vicious murders that particular year, every single time that he made a transaction. As investigators make their way towards David's private study, nothing could prepare them for what they were about to find. A crime scene investigator called one of the lead detectives in tears and in a state of absolute shock based on the discoveries that had been made at David's home. Once she was finally able to compose herself, she stated that, whilst they were searching David's study, they found a large collection of photos that appeared to show dozens of deceased people being sexually assaulted in numerous different manners whilst in a mortuary setting.
Are they ones he's taken? Well... Why does that person look dead?
So obviously, as you've just seen, that's a small clip of investigators looking at these photos that they've just found. Some of them were found hidden in drawers, hidden in a wardrobe. And it just seems just unreal. They said there's this person, see him, and the other one interrupts, dead.
It's, as you said, like the scene, like, you know, the kind of harmless man opening the front door and seeming very kind of normal, and then just going into a normal house setting, and then you're finding this treasure trove of absolute horrors and nightmares.
I'm assuming it's a room that he just told his wife not to go in, because they weren't even, you know, that intricately hidden. It was in the bottom of a wardrobe and at the bottom of a load of drawers. Obviously the hard drives were kind of hidden at the back of a chest of drawers, but it's unlike anything we've covered before. They also found hard drives in a hidden compartment stuck to the back of a chest of drawers. Some were labelled Register, Necrolord, Deadly, Deadliest, and Best Yet. Sergeant David Shipley was given a series of hard drives and photos that he was informed were containing mortuary material, which he was then responsible for reviewing. He recalled the following.
I felt, as a sergeant, I can't ask someone else to look at this, because I don't even know if I could look at this. As human beings, we always use the phrase, rest in peace, and that just kept playing on my mind. The one thing that these people are not doing is resting in peace. Wow, that's quite powerful.
Yeah, that's very admirable of him, the fact taking that burden on himself. I mean, yeah, I know someone who had a job role in having to look at hard drives of horrific things, and is there something that you can't, you carry it with you? It's like, yeah, so it's, I think it's very kind of admirable of him to take that on.
David Fuller committed every sexual act that is possible to do with the human body. The ages of the victims ranged from 9 all the way to a lady who was over 100 years old. He was abusing ladies up to 2 or 3 days before he was arrested, and the earliest footage we found was from 2007. There were 897,000 files just on the first hard drive, and I had to go through every single one. That's nuts.
Yeah.
That is, almost 1 million pieces of evidence just in the first hard drive alone. And to elaborate on that, as Sergeant Shipley stated, and there's a documentary called The Monster in the Morgue, which is on Sky Documentaries. It's well worth a watch, but he talked about eventually he continued, his marriage suffered as a result of this investigation. He was in charge of a team that for I think 11 months had to review all this material, and he just kept coming home and crying, and his wife kept asking and he wouldn't tell her, and eventually he had to tell her, and she couldn't begin to comprehend what he was dealing with. As Tom said, the friend that you have that has to review some of this content, you don't think of people that have that as a job. No. And you have to be built different, don't you, to be able to carry that.
Someone might go, well, surely after, because I thought the same thing, surely after 100, you've seen 100, then you're like, okay, this is enough evidence to convict them. But the reason why you have to look through all of them is because there might be, it might even be someone who hasn't passed away and it's a child. It might be, and also, families need to be made aware of what's happened to their relatives as well. So you can't just say, okay, now I've seen enough this is going to definitely convict him. You need to go through it for the actual respect of the victim. And if there's anything that could, prevent anything, or as I said, if it wasn't all deceased bodies, if it was, evidence for someone else that's been attacked, you need to make sure that that's properly looked into. So, I can't think of many more horrific jobs out there. And
So as Sergeant Shipley stated, one hard drive alone contained almost 900,000 images and 504 videos. It took 9 officers 5 months to work through the property seized from David Fuller's home. The digital material included, quote, extreme pornographic material found on 1,300 CDs, 2,200 floppy disks, 30 different mobile phones, and 34,000 photo prints, negatives, slides, and camera film rolls. So it just shows as well, as technology is advancing, he's continuing with what he's doing and advancing with it, which is just ridiculous. The last offence came just 3 days before he was arrested at his home, and it took Sergeant Shipley a staggering 12 months to collate all the details from the footage and photographs found in David Fuller's study. David Fuller lived a normal life the entire time, having numerous marriages and children of his own, and the sergeant's log of details collated were then shared with a large team of officers who then had the grim task of trying to identify each of the victims, before then going on to inform their families after consultation with an independent ethics committee. And once this was done, 78 different families were visited by police during the very first weekend of this decision. And I thought then as well, because I understand it completely, there's kind of like a moral dilemma on telling the families. I understand they probably have obligations and responsibilities they have to inform the families. But I wondered, is it better to be if or why? So instead of like not knowing about it, if when it eventually comes out, was it one of my family members? Or then knowing that it was your family member, why? Why was it my family member? So the if versus the why, if that makes sense. So if they didn't tell the families, it would be, oh, if my family member was involved. Whereas if they did tell the family members, they knew about it, why was my family member involved? Would it be better that they didn't know?
Yeah, then the why makes it sound like why did he pick that person rather than...
Well, that's what you'd be, how could someone do that? Why could someone do that? Whereas if you didn't know it was your relative, it would be, oh, if it was done to my... Maybe the wrong words there, but do you know what I'm saying? What the argument over telling the family or not?
Yeah, I think is better to know. Is it better to know or not know? I guess, yeah. And then is it better to leave it up in the air? But I think it's tricky, isn't it? It's tricky because as well, like a lot of people have different beliefs about, when you pass on what exactly happens and religious ideas as well. And I think even though it is absolutely horrific, I do think the right thing is probably to let the families know, just to prevent any uncertainty and any questioning. And in theory, if you tell the families, you're going to then prevent like hundreds of other families sitting there thinking that might have happened to their family. So you are preventing the.
That's true.
It's horrible though, yeah.
It's really difficult because one individual went on to take their own life when they learned what had happened to their loved one. So it's so... I just found that such a hard... Obviously, they've gone to it's such a big decision. They've gone to an independent ethics committee. I have no idea what to advise in that situation or anything like that and how they have to process that decision.
I actually get what you're saying, Ben. Like if there's a need in certain situations to inform. But I think... The moral side of it is they should be told in all cases. But I get what you're saying completely.
Yeah, I made a bit of a word salad of it, but what I meant to say was basically I assume when they go to this ethics committee, this independent advisor, the argument is, do we tell them or not? That's ultimately what they're trying to decide. And the argument is if they don't tell them, they're always going to be wondering, well, was it one of my relatives a victim? If they do tell them, it's why was my loved one a victim?
I also think that if they don't tell them, it's kind of as if they've swept it under the rug a bit and they're not owning up to their mistake of having this go on in their facility for that long.
That's very true. I mean, ultimately, I hope it comes across. I agree that they told the families. I don't want to sound like I'm someone saying they shouldn't have told them. Sergeant Shipley continued.
I worked in a job that only ever deals with the bad side of things, but I always set myself the idea that the minute I ceased to be shocked or angry, that was the time to hang up my boots and move on. We know that he killed in 1987, but even I didn't think that, as a human race, we could be so cruel. It's that moment when you first plug in the hard drive and you look at what you're confronted with. That's when the kind of reality of the case can start hitting home. You catch your breath, and you know that what you are seeing is so far out of anyone's frame of reference. This is not a human being doing this. This has to be something other. This is a monster. Those things, they haunt you. And they can haunt you for a long, long time.
This goes into a bit more detail about the sexual assault David Fuller would go on to do in the mortuary, so I completely understand if people want to maybe just skip forward a little bit. David Fuller used a normal compact digital camera, which he took with him to work at the hospital. He would use the timer function in the camera to take pose photographs and also take point of view photographs. He would undress to only his socks and pose next to the corpses in various stages of sexually assaulting them. In one video, David could hear someone coming into the refrigerated area of the mortuary whilst he was filming himself naked and sexually assaulting a corpse. He'd turn the light off and seem to hide somewhere in the mortuary. Once the person leaves and the light comes back on, to the investigator's shock, David was still completely naked and resumes the assault. Many of David's victims had lost their lives to disease, old age, some had suffered accidents or falls. 2 sisters died from a car crash, and all of them had stories and families of their own that had been tainted by what David Fuller did to them. At least one individual made the decision to end their own life based on learning what happened to their loved one. The following day, DNA taken from David Fuller whilst in police custody proves to be a complete match of both the duvet recovered from the Wendy Knell scene and the tights recovered from the Caroline Pierce scene. His shoe size also perfectly matches the bloody Clark's shoe print left at the Wendy Knell scene. It was 1 billion times more likely that the DNA came from David Fuller than any other person. Though the investigators were aware of other crimes emerging, they had to focus on trying to get a conviction for the bedsit murder first, and so one of the many interrogations of David Fuller begins.
Now, we know that...
I want to admit I am admitting the offences, but I don't really want to go into detail.
Yeah. Okay.
I appreciate that.
And what offences are you admitting, David?
As you've just described to me.
Okay. In terms of the sexual penetration of corpses? Okay.
Just imagine you're trying to process him and interrogate him for these 2 murders, which, by the way, your police forces have been working on for 30 years. You're then getting phone calls about this that's been found in his house. The fact that they have to almost say, look, keep that, we'll start a new investigation on that. We've got to convict him for this first. I can't, they already have to deal with so much, these people, don't they? The people in the police. And I can't imagine the reaction to some of them getting that information through.
Yeah, I mean, as well, it's still them fighting for justice for those victims over there, but, you know, everyone wants to have closure and wants to know that they're, you know, relative, that they're getting the justice for what's happened to them as well. So I completely understand wanting to just get this bit convicted done and then move on to the further trials, just to then make sure everyone, you know, has their day in court, so to speak. Police asked David Fuller to explain how he has been forensically linked to both murders, and with a lawyer sitting next to him, he says, "I don't know why," before turning and looking straight at his lawyer. He then claims that he had only heard about the 2 murders today, despite living in the Tunbridge Wells area at the time the murders occurred. The murders were significant news at the time, not just in the area, but nationally, and have featured on television, radio, and in newspapers dozens of times in the years since. He then looks at his lawyer once again, before answering no comment to the remaining flurry of questions. David is charged with the 2 murders later that day and kept remanded in police custody. He was 34 years old at the time of the murders in 1987. The victims' families have been waiting 33.5 years for answers and closure, with some no longer living to receive them.
Yeah, another note I made, but we've obviously there's so many talking points in this episode, is how does a lawyer, I know that some of them are obviously state appointed, court appointed, you know, local lawyers to represent them, but how does a lawyer even begin to defend someone like this? Not only is there overwhelming evidence against them, but the nature of the evidence and the nature of the crimes. How do they even...
It's always the moral quandary with lawyers, isn't it? In terms of if they actually think the person's guilty and they're arguing against it. It's very... I couldn't do it, but I guess it's someone's human right to have a defense.
Well, I guess in a case like this, if they're taking on that case, it's their plan to get sort of the minimum, the most efficient, minimum guilty
conviction.
Conviction possible, rather than trying to prove that they're innocent or anything crazy like that. It's their job just to minimise it as much as possible. But yeah, completely agree. Who takes those cases on?
Ryan Copper, a former long-term colleague of David Fuller's at Kent and Sussex Hospital, remained in a state of disbelief regarding what he had learned from the case.
Dave wasn't a monster. He wasn't creepy. He wasn't weird. He was always nice to be around. Everyone liked him. Dave had access to everywhere in the hospital. He had free rein to go wherever he liked, whenever he liked. To think that I worked with this guy for 3 years, the fact that 1 minute we could be in the office and the next he could be committing these horrendous crimes and coming back in and talking to me like nothing had happened. My whole world flipped when I was told. I trusted him. He'd met my kids. Dave wasn't a monster. He was practically invisible. The last person you would ever expect to do what he did.
There is apparently nothing unusual about David needing to attend the mortuaries so regularly. They often had faults with the temperatures of the body freezers amongst other electrical and mechanical issues. He was a senior electrician who could often fix any fault, but the faults tended to be repeat issues. Ryan Copper continued.
There wasn't really any restrictions for Dave. He was a senior electrician and he had lots of responsibilities, whether that was A&E or maternity. There was nothing stopping him to go wherever he liked. There was nothing odd about him needing to go and do jobs in the mortuary. They would often ask Dave to go and have a look at the temperature sensors for the body freezers. They would ask for Dave because nobody else knew how they worked or how to repair them. Dave always worked the late shifts because there was often no one there in the mortuary and he could crack on with his maintenance and repairs.
That's the thing, he's got that under complete control, hasn't he? And the scary thing is, there's no one there to stop him or question him because he's the expert. So he could say there's a serious problem and it's urgent because if I don't fix this fault, there's a problem with the maintaining certain temperatures and it's going to take hours to fix and I'll be in there. Don't disturb me.
Yeah, that's literally his world and he kind of rules over it at the moment. He can do what he likes.
It's a fucking rank. January of 2021. David Fuller, who was brought out of police custody for the first time since his arrest, was interviewed for the first time in connection with the hundreds of crimes he had committed in the mortuaries of the hospitals that he was working in. The investigating detective firstly starts asking David about his role at the hospital and which areas he frequently worked in. They cover that he regularly accessed A&E, the maternity wards, and also the mortuary. They discuss the mortuary being opposite to David's office. They also discuss David regularly using a swipe card to gain access to certain areas. The detective then lays out the allegations as well as the large volume of discoveries of photographic and video evidence against David before politely asking, and I love this moment because he completely has him in control now. So David, whereabouts should we start? Where would you feel comfortable to start talking about what you've done? David immediately replies, well, I'm not comfortable at all, really. And the investigator immediately replies with, no, do you want me to help you? So he's very you can see him. He knows they have the evidence. He knows what they found in the house. And he is absolutely squirming on this chair in the interrogation room now. When asked why he recorded everything, David sternly replied with, I don't know why. When asked about the age range of his victims, David says 60 to 70, something like that. I don't know exactly. The detective then asks, and the youngest? To which David quickly replies, yeah, I know what you were going to say. And then there's a 10-20 second silence. And then he says, 9. David then concludes, I am admitting the offences, but I don't really want to go into detail. I hope you appreciate that. I need to just say something about the whole thing, because to go through all of this in detail today has totally exhausted me. I've admitted everything. I can't deal with it. Every single thing that you're saying is killing me off. It really is.
My heart bleeds for him, the poor bastard. Absolute fucking, but yeah, making it about him, and it's like, yeah, no, mate, you need to atone for what you've done. We need to go for everything you've done. You can't be let off because you're old and pathetic.
This whole point as well, that they're now opening interrogation into the morgue, the mortuary crimes. This whole time, he's still pleading not guilty to the other 2 murders, by the way, the bedsit murders. He's remaining, despite overwhelming evidence against him, he's still saying, didn't murder them, wasn't there. Which we'll get to the eerie evidence shortly. On the 8th of October 2021, David Fuller reluctantly pleads guilty to sexually abusing the bodies of 78 women and girls. He says the following during the interrogation. I'm not insane. I may have some sort of residual personality problems, you know. I've gone a completely almost Christian life and a deadliest life all together at the same time with no crossovers. It's just 2 totally different personalities. David had to stand trial for the murders of Wendy and Caroline first before facing the mortuary charges and subsequent trial. His defense, meanwhile, argued that the DNA evidence against him for the murders wasn't reliable and accurate. But Producer Dan, let's talk about some of the eerie evidence left behind by David Fuller at the bedsit murders.
God.
Because this is just, he's completely fucked now with these bits.
The Clark sports trainer. There is a photo of David taken in the mid-80s of him lying down on his stomach with his trainers on. His trainer soles were facing straight towards the camera and matched the Clark's print identically. Whilst being interrogated, David said that he had never been on Guildford Road in Tunbridge Wells, where Wendy Knell was murdered. A vehicle tax registration for his red Ford Capri that was found in his house showed that not only had he been to Guildford Road before, he previously lived on Guildford Road in Tunbridge Wells during the late 1980s. As David had lived the life of a semi-professional photographer, there were several packets of Super Snaps photo printing services found in his house. These were obtained from the Tunbridge Wells branch of Super Snaps at the time when Wendy Knell was the manager. David made no comment when asked if he knew or had ever been to the Buster Brown's American restaurant in Tunbridge Wells. In a 1986 diary found in his home, he stated, 19th November 1986, meal at Buster Brown's. This was at a time when Caroline was the manager there, and just a year before she was abducted and murdered. And finally, the day before Wendy Knell was murdered, David took part to the London to Brighton bike ride, 23rd of June 1987. The day after he murdered Wendy, he had his car serviced in Tunbridge Wells. He was living two very separate and very different lives, not allowing murder to halt it.
Wow. So yeah, a lot of evidence there.
Ding, 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 ding.
As well as the DNA, obviously. But yeah, he was trying to lie his way through this, basically. And then, yeah, Wendy Knell's murder, he did a London to Brighton bike ride the day before. Then he murdered her. Then he went and got his car serviced the next day. Claimed he'd never been on Guildford Road, but he lived there before. It's just, yeah, absolutely mad. And you see them pull the Super Snaps packages out of his home, and it's just really, really eerie.
The 1st of November 2021. At the Old Bailey in London, David Fuller's two murder trials begin. His trial was expected to last 3 to 4 weeks. However, on day 3, the defence stopped the trial to allow David to enter a guilty plea to both murders, essentially throwing in the towel. At the upcoming sentencing remarks scheduled for the following month, his mortuary crimes were then revealed to the court and the general public for the very first time. Early December 2022, the total number of victims of David Fuller's mortuary atrocities arises to 101, with David entering an additional guilty plea to 22 additional offences committed during his time working at different hospitals over the last 3 decades. December 7th, 2022, in making her sentencing remarks at the Old Bailey in London, Mrs. Justice Chima Grubb addressed David Fuller and the court with the following statement.
Your victims are not all among the dead. Even that is powerful, because it affects everyone. They fill this courtroom and other places which are connected to this court by video link. How could their loved ones be so violated in a place which was meant to care for them and keep them in peace? Some have the comfort of faith, others not even that. They describe being heartbroken by the immorality of your abhorrent acts. You have sullied and stolen fond memories from thousands of people. And who are you, David Fuller? You are 68 years old. In 1973 and in 1976, you were convicted of dozens of burglaries committed by climbing into homes through windows. You spent the subsequent years living a lie and the facade of a mild and ordinary life. While in seclusion, you committed revolting and outrageous acts of the deepest darkness. You have a family who you deceived over all those years too. As I told you last year, the depravity of what you did to those who you killed and those who you defiled after death reveals that your conscience is seared. It is almost impossible to believe that a single man can cause the misery to so many that you have done. But you did it, and in consequence, you are paying the price that human justice can exact. The rest of your mortal life in prison.
People, who work in courtrooms and do the final things, they always word things in such powerful, brilliant ways, don't they? Sums it up so well. Yeah. And
the full closing remarks are about 5 or 6 pages long, and it's an incredible read. It's really harrowing at parts, but to have the responsibility to have to prepare that and deliver that, as well as everything else as a judge, obviously, is there's just hats off to so many people in this case that did their job. And I'll put the links to the full sentencing remarks, and there's also a public inquiry into this case and how it was able to happen, which is again a hefty old PDF document, but I'll put them both in the Facebook group.
On the 15th of December 2021, exactly 34 years to the day that Caroline Pierce's body was found, David Fuller is sentenced to 2 whole life terms for the 1987 murders of Wendy Knell and Caroline Pierce. He received an additional 12 years for the mortuary crimes, including a conviction for the possession of indecent images of children. I'm surprised it's just 12 years, to be honest, for that. I know it's 2 life per therapist already, but that to me seems very light.
Yeah, I would agree.
Libby Clark from the CPS stated, David Fuller's deeply distressing crimes are unlike any other I have encountered in my career and unprecedented in British legal history. No British court has ever seen abuse of this scale against the dead before.
Another thing that I found quite surprising is that the living relatives of Wendy Knell and Caroline Pierce that were attending this trial, they didn't know all the other crimes that were about to be revealed. So they were there to get justice for their families. And then when they heard, obviously, everything else that had happened,
Wow.
they were just like, they didn't think it could get any worse. You know, our daughters, our loved ones were killed. Their lives were ended. But he did this to 101 additional people.
Yeah, I think without this case, usually when we cover a case, you end up thinking like, quite clearly the kind of character of the person. Whereas with this one, I still feel like he's a bit of a mystery. Like, obviously, with what you read earlier on, Ben, about we don't know this about his childhood and whatnot. Yeah, it leaves you to speculate. Well, leaves you to imagine something must have happened to trigger this kind of behavior. Not that anything could trigger it and be that can be an excuse for it happening, but he does still seem like just a bit of a mystery to me. Like, we say a speculating motive, complete control, no resistance, and complete power over a body. But yeah, it seems like the escalation from being a breaking creeper to doing this stuff and obviously murder. It's very hard to wrap your head around that kind of progression.
It really was frustrating because I thought when I saw the extent of the crimes, the early life is going to be fascinating, but obviously there's nothing. And it was hard to even attain that he had a sibling or anything like that. It was really, you had to dig for it. And I think Dan put it really well where he said it became his world and he was in control, because I don't know what happened that switched this, I could do this. But I know that he was already a criminal by the point he started working in the hospitals. He got then a really senior position, access to anywhere he wanted, realised that, okay, most of the mortuary staff go home after the day shift, I can do this. And then he's obviously escalated that to just levels you can't even comprehend. And just there was no fear of even that moment where he described and someone almost catching him.
Yeah.
Like, still just, okay, they've gone, I'll resume it.
It's so comfortable and calm with,
Yeah.
So at the time of filming, David Fuller is 70 years old and has been housed at the Category A prison, HM Prison Frankland in County Durham. The prison has been given the same nickname as HM Prison Wakefield, the Monster Mansion, as it currently and has previously held some of the UK's most notorious and most despicable murderers, rapists and terrorists. Other current inmates of Frankland include Levi Belfield, Ian Huntley, Michael Adebolajo, David Copeland and Wayne Cousins, whilst it previously housed Peter Sutcliffe, the Yorkshire Ripper, Howard Shipman, Charles Bronson, Colin Pitchfork, and a disgraced former professional footballer, Adam Johnson.
Monster Mansion indeed.
I mean, they are, everyone Tom has just listed is a monster to an extent. Well, they all are. But him, Fuller, David Fuller, this is just, I want to say next level. I still can't. It was the one time I've ever really researched something. I think maybe the James Bolger case, where I've had to stop and just go outside and get some air and stuff, because fucking hell, it's just completely tragic. And all the families that have then had to not only go through the trauma of losing someone, I mean, a lot of them were taken long before their time, accidental deaths, diseases, car crashes, things like that. And to then learn that in the safest place they are supposed to be most protected, this has been happening.
Yeah, you grieve in, you go through the process, and maybe, you're going to have to go through, the process again of grieving again and trying to deal with that. And yeah, you can't even fathom the kind of how that would, how you can even quantify any of that. It's truly like some of the darkest stuff we've covered, I think. So that was the case of David Fuller, the monster in the morgue. Yeah, very dark one indeed. But the audience vote, and I can see why people want us to cover that. Is, as we always say, it's important to cover these cases. But yeah, I can see why. It also derives a lot of intrigue as well. But yes, next week we're on to the finale.
Ooh. I don't think anyone's going to guess it, Tom. Just in general, the case that we're covering.
And for anyone still eager for more content, we have over 200 minisodes over on the website, over at icmop.co.uk, and also on Spotify. If you hit one of the padlocked episodes, you can sign up on there. And as a little celebration, we did a cheeky little ICBAP Hot Ones, which has been edited and is now live over on the website. I'm sure we've released a trailer to it and posted it on our socials, but just to explain why I did that was to celebrate hitting 200 minisodes over there.
Yeah, not excited for the clips of that.
And that literally was some hot ones, wasn't it, boys? It was mildly I wouldn't even say mildly uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable.
I actually used the last dab whilst having dinner the other night, and it actually was all right.
Oh,
but I think the last dab wasn't the one that got us. Surprisingly, I thought that would be the one, but no, 2 other ones really got us.
Shrinker.
Yeah, a lot of sweating and teary eyes, and yeah, it's
air-conditioned tongues.
Mm.
You okay?
Unreal.
So yeah, that was the audience vote for the series. We do one every single series. So if you aren't already, why not follow us on our social media at Could Murder a Pod, pretty much everywhere: Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram. We'll do an audience vote for Series 12. And thank you for everyone that did provide brilliant case suggestions. There's a load now that have made a shortlist, perhaps for Series 12, which we're really excited to go away and prepare for. But it's time for a little CC. Maybe one of the last ever. Perhaps the last ever.
Benjamin Carter's cryptic clues. Everyone gather round for some clues that can be quite cryptic, but he's going to give them to you anyway. Hope you can figure them out.
The cryptic clue for the series finale of Season 11 is The Wacky Races Babies. The Wacky Races Babies. Fairly moderate level, should get it.
Yeah, and well, anyone knows Wacky Races will get it, I think.
There you go. Bloody dastardly.
It's just probably an age limit on there.
Yeah.
But that's fine. Google it, you'll probably figure it out. But yeah, that's fun. No, by far not the worst that you've done.
Thank you so much.
So we finished on a fine. But anyway, yeah, we'll be back next week with the finale. It's been a great series. I want to say a big welcome and a big thank you to anyone who has joined us over this series. It's been a privilege. And also a huge shout out to all the OGs and people that supported us all along the way. You know, it doesn't go unnoticed. We couldn't do this without you. And we're looking forward to delivering the finale with you guys. And also we'll organise a little live rap party at some point, which we'll let you guys all know about.
I would love that. I would really love that.
Well, we will, Dan. But anyway, like we always say...
We say this all the time.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Well, unless... Yes! I mildly got him. I'm hardly going back. Unless it's, yeah. Did I get you? Was that real?
The audio was so delayed for me.
There was a delay.
So that got me.
But yeah, I mean, don't do, well, all of these things. Unless it's creeper burgers.
Unless it's not calling the police at midnight if you hear screams. Call the police.
Yes.
Just do it if you hear screams at midnight.
Yes.
Yeah, don't do creeper burglaries either.
No.
What are you trying to say there? Don't do any of this except creeper burglars.
Well, don't do that. I didn't know Clarks did trainers either. I thought it was all school shoes. Sports trainer. White. Oh.
Yeah, all right. Well, see you later, guys. Take care of yourself.
Bye-bye.
Toodle pip.
Bye.
Ooh.